Hey everyone, it's Jess, and it's time for this week's Just the Tip. Okay, so this morning I'm just back from tennis, all sweaty, but I couldn't wait to share this one with you. I was listening to the eBay for Business podcast yesterday. That was episode 349, I believe, and they had a guest who was Evan Swanson. He's eBay's senior product manager, and they had a whole discussion about summer selling strategies. So this tip actually doesn't come from me, but I want to put my own spin on it. So he gave a fantastic tip for nurturing repeat buyers that I haven't articulated in a way that I probably should have by now. Anyway, his tip was, don't ask buyers for feedback. Ask them to save you as a seller. So just for some context, I see posts on social media a lot from newer sellers who are like, I'm not getting enough feedback. Not enough of my buyers leave feedback. How do I get my buyers to leave me feedback? And I always say the feedback system should be abolished, which is another episode that I'll get into some other day probably. But getting lots and lots and lots of feedback, like thousands of feedback, no longer helps your business after like a few dozen. Once you've established yourself as a seller and you have a few lines of feedback that show that you're reputable and trustworthy, you do not need 500, 5,000, 25,000 feedbacks anymore. Stop asking your buyers for feedback. Ask them to save you as a seller. Here's why. And Evan Swanson got into this in the podcast episode, which I will link in the show notes, which you should definitely go and listen to and get all the details. But the reason is that you can then use eBay's promotional marketing tools to contact people who have saved you as a seller and are happy that they bought from you, to encourage them to buy from you again. Doesn't that sound great? You've heard me talk about in other episodes how it's much cheaper to retain a happy existing customer than it is to attract a new one. This is a great example of that. Once you are saved as a seller by a buyer, then you can go into Manage My Store and click on Store Newsletters. You can create coupons designed specifically for sellers who've bought particular types of items from you before, and then send those messages out to them to encourage them to buy from you again. And you don't need promoted listings to do this. So I've heard a lot of complaints about promoted listings, and I'm going to get into that in my next full episode coming out, I guess, next week. But you do not need to pay for promoted listings in order to use saved sellers as a tool to get more sales. It's great. It can be free, and you can obviously build it onto a promoted listings campaign for even higher success. But if you're not comfortable using promoted listings, the saved seller option is a great way to reach out to those repeat buyers. So don't ask for feedback anymore. Ask buyers to save you as a seller, whether that's through messages, product inserts, social media, or however you want to do it. Get those followers on eBay and leverage that to your advantage.